Hi, it's Sigiswa, aka Tulip. So today what I wanted to talk about is the month of August in South Africa. The month of August in South Africa is dedicated to women. And so how it came about is that on the 9th of August 1956, a group of women marched to the Union buildings in Pretoria to protest the DOMPA system that we had at the time. The DOMPA system is a system that was specifically for black people, and what it did was that as a black person, you had to carry this little paper around that said that you were allowed to be in urban areas or in the city, either for work purposes or you're visiting or whatever it is. But it was obviously specifically for black people, and for obvious reasons, this was quite, oppressive and not exactly ideal. And so women decided to march to union buildings in solidarity with each other around this issue of the oppressive nature of the Dompas. So that's how Women's Day came about. But what has I've noted this really worrying sort of trend that's been happening around Women's Month, where it doesn't necessarily feel like a genuine attempt at discussing women empowerment, gender issues, or the violence or gender-based violence against women. It's become more of a commercial undertaking. A lot of advertisers also obviously now have jumped onto the bandwagon for obvious reasons, because it's a gold mine. And you have the most ridiculous campaigns around telling people to buy women flowers and send them chocolates to show them you appreciate them as women, and pampering, and you get special spa vouchers and specials at restaurants, or florists, and all these ridiculous things that really have no real bearing in terms of furthering the conversation around women empowerment and the issues that we face on a day-to-day basis. And I think we need to have central to this whole campaign that extends over an entire month the dismantling of the patriarchal structures that we live in and we find ourselves in, whether it be within personal relationships, or whether it is at work, or just being a woman, just womaning. Every day you are faced with potentially violent situations. And I mean, by violence I don't necessarily mean only physical violence, but in terms of the words that is used, in terms of addressing women, or just the nature of how it is that men tend to treat women as though they're property. I mean, you face that every day, just walking out to go to shops, and you have how many people, wolf whistling and saying all sorts of things, trying to grab you and touch you. I mean, I've had that stuff like that happen to me since I was a child, like literally like 9 years old, and grown ass men like saying the weirdest shit to me, and you're like, I'm a child. Do you not see that I'm a child? And what makes you think that you're entitled to my body? I mean, obviously, up until today, I mean, the same thing happens, but it's like this entitlement that men seem to feel over women's bodies and telling you what to do. Even with this Women's Month, they telling you how it is that how you need to act in order to be acknowledged as a real woman, a strong woman, an aspirational woman. You must be demure, you must be respectful, you have to necessarily also portray this motherly figure, you have to be strong. Why must I be strong? Why can't I just be? Men have the option to just be. But I just really wonder about the genuineness around having these sorts of conversations and how detrimental they are to the psyche, of a lot of women in society. And, particularly around state institutions who are at the forefront of this campaign, they themselves, are patriarchal by nature, but they are also buoyed up by women who have proximity to this power of men. And so, by virtue of the proximity, they obviously invested in maintaining this unjust system by, in turn, then oppressing other women. So I think, when we have situations like this, we have something called the ANC Women's League, and I think it's the most irrelevant and inflammatory organization, actually, because in terms of addressing what women's issues are, challenging power structures designed specifically to undermine women and to keep them oppressive, I just don't think they do anything to further that conversation. Why are we not having conversations around the fact that women are still being underpaid and but doing the same jobs as men? Why are we not having conversations about the nature of gender-based violence and the fact that it's so normalized that people take it as a given, that as a man, it's your job to discipline your woman by beating her, and if you don't do that, you don't love her, or certain, all those damaging sort of conversations. I mean, we have a president who was accused of rape and slept with his friend and comrade's daughter, and this is the person who's running the country. How is that allowed to happen? And people just sit by and take it, and then he officiates a Women's Day events on Women's Day, and yet he himself is the greatest violator, you know, of women and women's rights. And also, maybe let's look at the fact that, what do women's rights actually even mean? You know, the fact what the women's rights means that you are able to go to work. Is that all right? Is that something that you need to earn? What women's rights are that now you are allowed to wear whatever we're not allowed to wear whatever it is that you want. I mean, we've seen so many demonstrations in that, whether it's in taxi ranks, or what happened in Kenya last year, where women in miniskirts were being beaten up and targeted. And like, nobody talks about those things and says, but also, men, can we look at what it is that you're doing around these issues? So anyway, essentially my point is that I'm actually quite over Women's Month, because I don't think it's a genuine attempt at having a conversations around gender, at dismantling patriarchy and the toxic nature of patriarchy. So for me, it's actually quite farcical and a bit of a joke. Until we can address that, I'm not sure really, what the point of this campaign is, other than just another commercialization of an issue that is actually quite a serious issue. So yeah, those are my thoughts. For now, anyway. Cool. Well, goodbye.